What's going on, everybody? Caleb Carter here, and you are watching the Royal Pursuit podcast. I want to take just a quick minute to encourage you to never stop reading Scripture, because you never know what you're going to find. Just this last few weeks, my family and I were doing a Bible study in the evening over a passage that I thought was really strange. In the story in Matthew chapter 22, Jesus is sharing this parable of this great wedding banquet, and this king invites all of these people. And when it comes time for the banquet, the people decline to show up. And so the king sends his servants out to go and invite anybody who will go. And the text says he invited both the good and the bad. And so the wedding hall was filled with guests. But then something kind of like struck me as odd. It said, but when the king came in to see the guests, he noticed that the man who was there, he noticed a man who was there that wasn't wearing wedding clothes. And he asked, "How did you get in here without wedding clothes, friend?" And the man was speechless. And then the king told the attendants, "Tie him hand and foot and throw him outside into the darkness where there'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are invited, but few are chosen." And I was so confused by this story, and I'd sat and pondered it all morning. And I wanted to share it with the kids that evening because I wanted them to see that not every Bible study produces fruit instantly. And sometimes we have to be okay with stories that we're not going to understand for years on end. And so we had a great conversation about why the king might refer to this person as a friend. Why would he throw him out? What was this guy really up to? So on and so forth. Well, the very next day I sat down, I started reading again, and I read from chapter 23 all the way through chapter 26. And in chapter 26, verse 50, I noticed that when Jesus is sitting in the garden, and this is when Judas is going to betray him and turn him over to the Jewish authorities and all of that, Jesus says something specific in Matthew 26:50. He says, "And Jesus replied, 'Do what you came for, friend.' And it caught me off guard. I thought, he said friend again. And I had just read that yesterday, so it was really fresh in my mind. And so I went and pulled the Greek on it, and I found that this Greek word, hetairos, it means companion or friend in the Greek. But what's interesting is there's only 3 occurrences. And I thought, well, that's odd because I know there's a passage in Luke where Jesus says, I now call you friends. And so I thought, well, what's this other passage in Matthew? And it says it's in Matthew chapter 20, verse 13. So I scroll over to Matthew 20:13, and in that passage, we see Jesus is sharing about this parable of these vineyard workers. And one of them, has been hired to work in the vineyard all day for a certain wage. And then the master of the vineyard brings in somebody at the end of the day and chooses to pay them the same wage. And this person's frustrated, and he's kind of like pushing back, and he's questioning the master. And this is what the master says. "But he answered one of them, 'I'm not being unfair to you, friend. Didn't you agree to work for a denarius?'" And there it is again, friend. And so these 3 instances of Jesus telling a story or Jesus responding with this name friend. And so then I started to look into the other Greek word, which is philo, where Jesus says, "I now call you philo, friends," when he's talking to his disciples. That's used 29 times in the New Testament compared to these 3. And so what we see here is there's this negative connotation with the way Jesus is using this version of friend. And it blows my mind to think that there's all these little nuggets of gold. If we'll only just dig and look for them, we'll find them. And Jesus is saying something about being a friend of Jesus or a friend of Jesus. And this negative connotation, this idea that you appear to be a friend, you're in this place, you look like a companion, but you're not acting like a companion. You don't have the same motives as a companion. And why I want to encourage you all is that if you just continue each day to read your scriptures, you'll find these amazing things. And so I'd love to hear what you guys think. Throw it in the comments. What do you think Jesus is really meaning? Do you think he's intentionally using this word for a specific reason, or is it just a coincidence? But I just can't help but think the 3 times that Jesus uses it, all of those are not positive uses of the word friend. And why didn't he just use philo to begin with? So I hope you found that interesting. I was blown away. I'll catch you guys later.